Hey everybody, it is Justin, your guide into the other side. A couple days ago, we were actually able to see the trailer for Seasonal Catalyst, right? And we saw a Mara turn into a Kodamara, and we got this thread, and we're kind of just basically, I just want to go over how do seasonal catalysts work, and how will potentially seasonal like sediment fragments that we farmed factor into the Kodamara evolution process called fusion, right? So we already know if you eat a Mara, if you eat a seasonal catalyst, you'll turn your Mara into a Kodamara, right? And they're more versatile defenders of Otherside. They're able to hunt, farm, enchant, and their original role will remain the strongest. So personally, I think that the catalyst will be integral to choosing your aesthetic, number one. And then number two, it will expand your abilities to do any of the three functions, farming, farming, or enchanting, right? So basically, we were able to see, there's 6 kinds of catalysts that we can choose from. We have different aesthetics to pick from: Vivek, Anthony, Leo, Chomp, Jules, and Hybar. And then we still don't necessarily know how the distribution of the catalyst will, drop into the leaderboard. I know that C4 said that we'll be able to pull catalysts outside of leaderboards, but that's yet to be disclosed, so we'll have to wait on that. So again, we got to see the Kodamara aesthetics, right? And we know that each specific role has a different aesthetic base than hunter Viveks are different than farmer Viveks, right? The farmers are a little bit taller, the hunters are a little bit shorter, and then the enchanters are the smallest of them, but they all have different aesthetics, right? So again, a Kodamara's traits will be randomly generated, unique combination depending on the catalyst and the type of Mara. And the type of Mara is, whether that's hunter, farmer, enchanter, right? And then just keep in mind the tier has no impact on the visual traits assigned to a Kodamara, right? So you basically have a lot of choice with regards to what type of aesthetic that you want. So that's probably what we're going to be choosing our seasonal catalyst for. But I know a lot of people are asking, like, how do sediment fragments influence the power of our Kodamaras, right? And we already know that, in season 3, essentially, or the next season after this one, they're going to implement HP, and they're going to implement, damage that the Shattered deals back to our Kodamaras, as well as the friends, right? So where do the Kodamara stand in terms of power scaling? And we'll have to, I actually want to go over this this tweet right here. A Mara's tier and role will have a direct impact on a Kodamara's in-game stats and skills. So the tier of your Mara and the role will directly impact the stats and skills. So what are stats and skills, right? So if we actually go over to, so basically, Voyagers can use sediment fragments to enhance their Kodamaras in the future. So I think that the sediment fragments will have an impact on those stats and skills, whereas the seasonal catalysts will impact, just the expansion of the roles, as well as the aesthetic that you can choose from. So where do we find that? We actually find, not there, not this one. God damn it. But basically, we already know that the Kodamaras are going to fulfill this role in between Maras and Kodas, right? We also know that if we actually take a look at this chart from other decks, right? If you take a look at the difference, you can kind of see, the DPS for a common hunter Mara is 40, and it goes up until 68, right? And then you can kind of see the legendary Mara hunter has a DPS of 68, and then there's a huge jump over to 130 for Kodas, right? So based on what we know, based on what we know, the Kodamars will fulfill that, that bridge gap between, the damage between Maras and the damage between Kodas, right? So when you evolve your hunter, it's obviously going to get stronger, right? And based off of, I personally think that based off of the sediment types that you feed it, it will probably influence, the stats of, DPS, damage increase buffs, speed increase buffs, and production based off what, Mara that you choose to, evolve, right? So, let's just give one example. If you evolve a legendary hunter, right, using, a seasonal catalyst, and then you probably use max amount of sediment fragments to kind of buff that, I would caution and speculate to say that that's probably going to end up on the higher range of that range between like 68 and 130. There's probably going to be some RNG distribution, based off when we, mint the new Kodamar collection using any of the three things that we need, whether it's a Mara, a seasonal catalyst, and the fragments, right? So you can also see, there's no really damage difference between, the 15, for enchanters, right? You can kind of see it goes 15% to 15% from a legendary enchanter to a Coda enchanter. So I don't necessarily know how the segmentation between, a legendary enchanter will be versus like a Coda being used as an enchanter, right? But you can kind of see, man, for hunters, there's going to be that range between 68 and 130. And then we can kind of go speculate and take a look at the farmers at 30% for legendary up until 35%. So, right. So, your main primary role when you use sediment fragments, from what I think, is going to directly influence your stats of your Kodamara when you pick whatever. So it's a little bit difficult to explain, but I know it's going to be within this range, right? And obviously, I mean, if you evolve a common, is it going to go within that range, or is it going to go slightly above legendary, or is it going to match legendary, right? Because you don't necessarily know, right? We don't know how much of a scaling increase it's going to be, because all the floor prices are probably going to adjust to reflect the power scaling across the board, right? And then we also know that it's going to be the Kodamara is going to be most effective at its original function. So we don't know what that power scaling is going to be if, let's say, you evolve a legendary hunter. Let's say you max it out, theoretically, hypothetically, whatever we need for that. Is that power scaling of its secondary role is going to be equal to that of a Mara, right? And at what range is its secondary roles going to be, right? Because I know a lot of people are going to mix and match and try to figure that stuff out. So that was just something I really wanted to point out. We're going to fulfill this range between, the power scaling. It's going to be within that range, and, its primary role is going to, fulfill this range. But I don't know if its secondary role is just going to be on the power scaling of, say, the Mara tier, right? And then, I obviously have the friends up here, so I might as well talk about that as well. I don't think the friends will have any abilities, but oh yeah, I did want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about that scaling too. So scaling is not only the stats and traits, of DPS, damage, speed, and production. It's also the skills, right? So we know that Maras have one ability, and we know Kodas have 3, I believe, 2 or 3. I need to figure stuff out, but we know that Kodamaras will have 2, right? Because it says right here. It says basically, let's try to find it. With each new season, Odas will acquire new skills and be able to execute more complex combos, right? So that's pretty interesting. That's definitely something you're gonna want to keep an eye on, especially if you're trying to find your synergy and stuff like that. But again, my TLDR was that Kodamaras will sit within this range. It'll have 2 abilities, and its price is probably going to be reflected within that range, because Kodas are sitting at somewhere like 4 ETH, and then top tier Mars are sitting at like, I don't know, probably like 1 ETH or so, depending on what it is. And then I would just kind of expect the Kodamaras to fill that range. It's probably going to be anywhere between I don't know, you might see this video sometime in the future, but it'll be within that range of like 1 to 4, right? The top Mara and the floor Kodas, so should be anywhere between like 1 and 4 ETH, so maybe 2 to 3, depending on how strong it is, what it looks like, whether people want it for aesthetics, whether it's a hybrid, blah blah. There's a gazillion things that's going to go into it, guys. So that's just kind of wanted to cover, just a quick 10-minute video. But again, that's all I got for today. I just wanted to go through this thread and, just kind of break it down for you guys. So hopefully this was useful. Hope you liked what you saw in this video. If you learned anything, definitely hit that like and subscribe button, because I'll always be dropping some game analysis going forward. So you guys know where to find me. All the links in the description. I'll catch you guys on the other side. See ya.